It is game number 1 in the first series of the day. The bottom left as the red Protoss, he is DnS. The top right as the blue Protoss, he is Harstem. We got ourselves a good old-fashioned PvP. Probably gonna be a lot of PvP today, as Snoot is the only non-Protoss player in this group. He'll be facing Mana in the second stage, and another best of 5 group stage format as always. So preliminary, losers, winners, decider. Things were thrown off a little bit yesterday because Masa was asleep, I guess, and missed his preliminary match, but he arrived for the losers match, so that kind of threw me off as well. But it was a fun group yesterday, if you guys want to check out the VODs. Unfortunately, our YouTube is still kind of, like, missing in action. I know some people have asked about it, and just simply put, like, you know, we don't really have anyone to do it anymore. And, to be honest, all the controversy around YouTube has lessened the desire, I think, to really focus on that even more so than was already the case with the whole issue of us not even be able to make money off of it. Which was, you know, that we attempted to make another YouTube, or BaseTradeTV attempted to make another YouTube, and then that didn't work out either. And it's been a whole mess of things. So unfortunately, it seems that VODs might be the only way to catch this. Or, I guess an alternative way is subscribing to the channel and getting the replays. That's pretty good too. But alright, we do have this game already getting heated up. It is Acolytes, so any map where you have that in-base expansion, I can't recall any other map names right now that have had it, but we've had, you know, definitely some in the past. You'll see the PvP always go into wall off their front base, stop them from scouting, and then generally place down something of a proxy. It just is the way things go. It's too tempting not to do it. You're going to want to probe scout, and your probe gets denied the entry, and then it's going to go and do something else. So DnS starts things off well with a Stargate in proxy. Harstem checking for said proxy. Unfortunately, takes a 50-50 chance. Left side or right side of an Acolyte and is wrong here. Is going for a Stargate opener himself. And this, if done correctly, could just straight up counter what DnS is doing. Excuse me. So he goes for an Oracle first, and this is going to be the part where it's not, I mean, I said correctly, but I maybe even, I meant more like kind of a blind counter, like that Harstem would expect this. So we can't get into the main base to see if there's a Nexus taken right, and their builds were very similar in the beginning. But if he scouts, there we go, he finally scouts where the Stargate is, and then he could actually immediately chrono out a Phoenix to help out here, as they don't have Mothership cores quite yet. And pylons are going to be hard to have in position everywhere when you only have 4 of them to use. So the Oracle of DnS is already here. The Phoenix is being chronoed out as fast as possible, but unfortunately it's going to take its sweet time. The Stalker can't really do very much to stop the Oracle from doing damage, but at least DnS's second Oracle should be shut down. If Harstem had taken a guess and just gone for a Phoenix first, well then his Oracle is, you know, obviously never made. He has no potential to do counter damage, and it's a little bit of a risk, because what if he, you know, or DnS didn't proxy it. But in this case, since Harstem did squeeze that Oracle out, he's going to get probably return damage. And, as I said, be able to shut down the second Oracle and really shut down this proxy. In fact, he's getting more damage than what DnS got. So that's 9 probes dead to 7. Harstem taking the better end of this trade. And that Oracle lives. Harstem get a second Oracle. DnS can't. And DnS, ooh, even lost the Oracle, it looks like. Well, I guess it makes sense. The Phoenix would have tracked down eventually. So nice opener from Harstem. The chances of it being a Stargate or Stargate, I would say, is like high enough that you know it's a possibility, but you're still hoping that you get, you know, the Oracle in at that right time. And then there's always a chance that your opponent doesn't go for their Stargate. You know, there certainly are a lot of builds in PvP. One of the, no, as a TVT player, I've got most of those built on lockdown. There certainly are a lot of variations of 1 base and 2 base in TVT, but it's the same thing for PvP. It's actually a really awesome matchup, especially explained by someone who really knows what's about. But even if you don't, I think the excitement's still there. Yeah, we don't have Stalker Disruptor anymore, which was the most exciting thing that could happen in StarCraft 2. But it's still an interesting matchup nonetheless. That is Harstem's second Oracle. He's even, I mean, the Phoenix doesn't really have a job right now, but in the future it could shut down War Prism harassment, so still a useful tool to have. And that probe is just looking for a gold medal in the Tasering Olympics. He's gonna get a Stargate eventually. Just watch. Looks like this Oracle took a lot of pepper on it. Did it fly into, I guess it flew into the overcharge. But it's alive, and that's what's important. DnS gets the faster third base. Harstem, holding off on it, went for his tech and additional production first. Which, this is definitely a way for DnS to come back. Again, not that he was so far behind because of the opener. He still got some probe kills, but as you can see, he's literally behind in probes. With a faster third Nexus and a little bit of greed with Chrono Boost on it entirely, he'll catch up and maybe even exceed that of Harstem's economy. So Harstem is, you know, building, as I said, production. But then that's where his economy might be better, but then his army's lesser, and that's where Harstem potentially gets that winning move where he just pushes in. But it's Acolytes, there's not really such a heavy lead that Harstem can simply say, look, well, I'm going to win right here, right now, and then push in. So I would say the chances of this going into a kind of even-ish mid-game is pretty high. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if Harstem, you know, roams around, and certainly he's getting a lot of really good scouting, and really sees like, hey, you just don't have a lot of production, you don't have a lot of units, he could certainly try and harass and then see an opportunity to kill and go for the kill. DnS doesn't have any front pylons. All he has is some of the mineral mines, which is a little bit dangerous. Only one with most of his production. And no immortals. He's getting actually quite a few observers, which are useful, but aren't even scouting the push incoming. His DnS has had severe lack of scouting since his Oracle has died. And this could just kill him. This could have been an immortal barely out in time to help, but now it's not. Oracle lives, is going to be taken out. Doesn't kill too many probes. It doesn't matter as long as it distracts DnS. And DnS is so, oh my god, desperate last force fields, but what are his force fields really going to do? And this looks like it might just be game. He said DnS, you know, didn't even, by the way, he never even caught up with probes, so forget that, but maybe if he had knowledge of the incoming attack, he would have pumped out an immortal, had the militia corps on the front lines, the additional pylons, and been able to hold a little while longer. Still behind, sure, but hold a little while longer? Nah, Harstem just got across the map without any sight on his army and demolished DNS's. So, in that way, that was a bit of a typical PvP, I feel. Like, you know, the proxy star gets shut down. Harstem does a little bit more damage with the Oracle himself, and then eventually goes in for the kill because he knows he can try. And in that case, he didn't have to scout very much to know that he could kill him. Interloper's going to be next. I think that game is also not just like a typical PvP, like, yeah, you know, one person got ahead and then he pushed and he won. It was also a testament to how great scouting can be. Sure, sometimes you'll have that person you face on ladder that like sends a billion hallucinated Phoenix, and you're like, what are you scouting? Like, you're not getting any farther ahead. But in that case, of course, the lack of scouting from DnS didn't quite have the right positioning to even try and take a fight. But also the scouting from Harstem just telling him exactly when he could push in like that. Because if Harstem had lost both of his oracles, maybe he's a little more hesitant. Maybe he does a drop with a front push, which is something that DnS might have been able to take care of, but nah. Just knowing you can go in there and shoot him down made it look easy. They said the next up is Interloper, and they're all ready to go, so let's get into it. So Harstem, very nice, easy game number one. Certainly some of the pitfalls of PvP on Acolytes was anticipated and dealt with really well. Just because it's expected doesn't mean that it never works. So while DNS's proxy Stargate might have looked like a bust and like why even do it in the first place, I'd say that the games that he's won with that are still pretty high on ladder. Harstem is just, I think especially, gonna give more background to these two players. Harstem is especially a good PvP player. You know, we had him for the Yord Civil War, which was, over a year ago at this point, but still we saw that he could really hold up in a strong macro-based PvP. And Harstem also seems to be really getting into his groove. Unfortunately, this still wasn't the year of Harstem where he got to BlizzCon, and Suit's the only one from this group going, but I always see Harstem as one of the most solid guys, solid Protosses in Europe. In some cases, even more solid than Showtime. Showtime had so much, I think, going for him, hype-wise, that you have the inevitable a moment where people start to turn on him, like, oh, he was overhyped, like he doesn't do very well, blah blah blah. But I feel like that's because of how hyped he was in the first place. Not that he was ever less good than what he was hyped about. It just was like, you know, we expected a lot from him. Anyways, the greatest thing was Showtime, just because Showtime's getting a little more of the spotlight than Harstem, even though Harstem's been around longer. Just to kind of reel that back and say that Harstem, especially when he's in the groove when it comes to practicing, I've heard is you know, oftentimes even better, more solid Protoss, especially in the likes of PvP. So expect great things from him in this group, I guess, kind of the TLDR, as well as potential to get out first. I think Snoots is the one where everyone's looking at to get out first, and Mana might have some good PvPs to get out second, but I'd really say Snoot first, Harstem second. That's my prediction anyways. So we have DnS going in there and scouting Harstem, and then looking like he wanted to proxy something, deciding not to. He is off of one base still, croning out that warp gate, getting stalkers. Harstem with his own stalkers tries to meet halfway. I mean, this is going to also find out if they had adepts, right? Then you're meeting them and already dealing damage. He didn't really get any scouting himself. In fact, never sent a probe out, so that was the first time he saw what DNS was producing. Now, you got to be careful of that proxy pylon, which was, in fact, put down, just not over here. It was over here. And there's even a proxy gateway. So, yeah, there's the slow warp-ins that may or may not win the game, but, like, the chance of that's pretty low. Well, the proxy gateway, you're really involving a lot of things into this and should be able to do some amount of damage. Does Harstem anticipate this or not? He's got one pylon on the front lines. His motion core already gets pretty weak. It's a little bit dangerous. There's about to be a lot of stalkers here. But Harstem is starting to take the better trades, really weakening DNS's stalkers. He's got a Robo on the way, which I was going to say an Immortal on the way, because I assume that's what he's going to get first and foremost. To get an Observer first would be the safer move in a lot of different games. Yeah, okay. So, you know, don't not expect that. But in this specific case, he'll probably wish he got an Immortal. The Observer doesn't take very long to make. It's 21 seconds. But considering what is about to be a very tight little game here, that's a big deal. So now he sees how many stalkers in the front lines, probably wishing he had started that Immortal first and foremost. Pylon goes down immediately, and DNS, I think, just got a good unscouted build against Harstem. Harstem's army goes down. He had just used the Heal City Phoenix as well, so he wouldn't have a Guardian Shield, I don't think. Not that he'd have anything to use the Guardian Shield on. And this is looking really good for DNS. You know, especially the fact that it wasn't slow warp-ins, it is fast with a third gateway. That's a big deal. Nexus is going to go down, and Harstem, not just losing his Nexus, also lost that army he was building up to. The Sentry is no longer able to gain energy here, which can be very crucial. Again, Guardian Shield, surprisingly crucial in PvP battles. Immortal does finally pop out, but is force-fielded away. Mothership Core goes down, and Harstem might just be SOL. He is. GG. Very quick 1-1. DNS getting that surprise aggressive build. A little bit trickier than the Oracle. The Oracle is something that can end a game, but nowadays should just be harassment and a bit of a lead. A gateway attack like that can end the game, and in that case it did. Harstem just not realizing what he was really going up against. Very quick 2-0. I don't even want to go to a commercial break yet, so we'll hold off on it. Abyssal Reef is up next. It's tied up 1-1. In the top left, as the red Protoss, he is DNS. In the bottom right, as the blue Protoss, he is Harstem. DNS coming back with a vengeance, very swift. 1-1. Harstem certainly has been on the defending side of this PvP. He defended against the Proxy Oracle in the first game, went well for him. He tried to be the defensive macro-oriented one in the second game, did not work well for him, but that had largely to do with his lack of scouting. He scouted so much on that Acolyte game, and that certainly has something to do with the popularity of proxies on Acolyte, but also that you do have that probe that gets shut out of the base anyway, so you go around scouting everywhere, like why not? It can't come back because you also walled off your main base. But the just simple lack of, like, no scouting whatsoever into Lucine Phoenix, well, the timing of what DNS did hits perfectly. Harstem could have built extra pylons at the front of the base to buy time for the Immortal, so the Observer, while it wasn't great, should not have really been the death of him. As those pylons can buy so much time, but one pylon already weakened, that's not going to do the trick. And DnS, I'm not sure he's going to get the trick off again to surprise Harstem, since Harstem this time is scouting. I don't have any info on this $1,000 cheer. Oof. The man, the myth, the legend is in chat. And just followed me on Twitter, too. I'm popular now. GB25. Ooh. So Probe gets in here, sees normal opener in PvP. You have your Nexus first, which are super rare. You have your Gateway expands, which are rare, but not as rare. And then you have 98% of PvPs, which is the double gateway, opener. And this time Harstem maybe gonna get, he's gonna get aggressive. He made Adepts instead of Stalkers, but so did DnS. So Adepts are nice for, I guess, multiple reasons, right? Adepts are real nice, am I right, guys? But they scout as well as get the potential to do damage. They pop overcharges, so a follow-up attack can sometimes do more damage. You know, the typical proxy Stargate comboed with this can definitely catch some lower league players off guard. Usually not the pro gamers. They're aware of the possibility, just have trouble defending against it. But yeah, the Adepts for both sides is what kind of makes this funny. As, you know, if DnS had gone for Stalkers, which he immediately follows up with Stalkers, by the way, so they're there to defend. He's probably chasing or looking around for these Adepts already, but now it's a question of who has the better micro, really. Who can defend and attack and get more done? Or do they both just go, I don't really want to do this, and stay back? Now, Harstem, he went for a follow-up of a Stalker in the Sentry, and that Sentry is actually a bit vulnerable to the Adepts, so I think he kept it back on purpose. But they depth shade into the wrong position to get the Sentry anyways, and near a pylon, which is guaranteed with this Triforce of Power, and gets 2 probes, whereas Harstem's Adepts just simply went back home. The later Adepts are as unexpected as the later Banshee. I remember when TG would play Northgard with people. They're there, Dares. They're there. Suit and Mana will be playing after this series. Only in very rare extreme circumstances do we let both series play at the same time. Oracle finds the Adepts along with the Stalkers. Doesn't usually happen like this, and popping the Oracle energy sometimes is not useful. Where did the Adepts even... They just both died? Yeah, they did both die. I thought one survived, but I thought it shaded, but it died. Very different graphics, but confused me. +1 on the way, as well as an Immortal, and despite all the potential interesting things that could have happened with the Adept opener, it didn't. Nothing really happened. DnS is behind a half a probe, I guess. 2 probes, okay, he's behind 2 probes. But that's not too big of a deal. Harstem is certainly getting ahead on what is going to be the more concrete Protoss army, but DnS is really hoping that his oracles can do something. I'm not so sure that it can. Really, the Stargate is kind of, well, is usually a useless tool in the mid-game for PvP. It can be amazing in the early game, but really, I view the Stargate in this matchup as something that is trying to make up for its worth. Whereas I would say the Twilight Council is instrumental most of the time, same with the Robo. A Stargate usually isn't unless you have someone going for like Mass Void Rays, which, hey, was a thing for like a month, or a year ago or something like that, but not anymore. So by following up with that instead of a Twilight Council or a much faster Robo, the Oracles really have to do something here. I don't know if just scouting is enough, to be honest. Although that is certainly something that DnS now has on his side, is his knowledge of everything, depending on how well he uses them. But while Harstem got the faster Robo and was already up to 2 Immortals, his Twilight Council actually wasn't that fast at all. He prioritized Immortals and +1, so he has those leads, but DnS is going to be able to get a charge faster. So the immortal count might actually be that useful. I mean, they're not that great against charge lots. Lucine Phoenix gonna track these down, I suppose. Harstem also needs scouting. For him, he's not going to be able to see exactly what's going on. He's not going to always see the exact composition, the whereabouts of a warp prism, the timing of a third or fourth base like DnS will. But he can be okay with that. He still needs to find out what the composition looks like. So I'm not quite sure why he's chasing the Oracle's Lucine Phoenix, but he has a warp prism that is not only going to be able to harass, but also scout a little bit. Now this is dangerous. He knows it's a Stargate, and the time of this warp prism could be limited if the Phoenix or two is built by DnS. But even warps in a couple of Zealots. Of course, we'll prioritize saving the Mortals over anything else. Really wanted to have the Stalkers come forward first. They don't, so a couple of Zealots were lost, a couple probes as well, and there is a Phoenix now on the way. DnS faster to the Templar Archives, as he was faster to the Twilight Council, is already on his way to Archons. Could even feedback if necessary in the future, but let's see, Harstem, nothing to feedback to Mothership Core. Thank you very much to Like Lincoln for the Twitch Prime sub. Actually, I haven't gone to the right dashboard here, so give me a second. Nothing's really happening in this game, so. Yep, that was the only, besides a little bit of bits here and there, that's the only thing that's happened. +2 in charge, now finishing up. Harstem is going to have this upgrade lead for quite some time. I assume he's going to immediately start +3. Even if he doesn't, that's a substantial upgrade lead. But positioning can certainly overtake one single upgrade. Positioning probably can't overtake two in an even army supply, but I think it can overtake one. And that's more what we have to pay attention to. A little bit also to their exact compositions. You know, will the 2 extra Immortals of Harstem really help out, considering they're both going to charge lot based armies? It's kind of questionable, actually. There's not a real answer to that. We just have to see what they do. Force fields will also still play a big role here. Cutting off very important units like the Archons away from the charge lots can be crucial. Guardian Shield, as I mentioned in the last game, is a surprisingly important spell. I'd say if you guys don't realize how important it is, just play Micro Battle Trainer, or whatever it's called, the Micro Tournament. That will have a specific PvP where Guardian Shield is always better. But a huge warping from DnS. That Warp Prism, maybe just not expecting it, still doesn't do a lot of damage. The Immortals have to be picked up and left. There's so many photon overcharges, and Harstem did have warp-ins available immediately. There's always that bit of a luck factor, I think, in PvP, where, or any matchup really with Protoss, where they might have just used their warp gates, right? And they can't warp in defensively, but in that case, Harstem shut that down easy peasy. But the Warp Prism's always going to be there, and Harstem's not the one that can get a Phoenix. Not yet, anyways. He is starting his Stargate, adding on a robotics bay as well, a second robotics facility. I mean, everything that you would expect in a late-game PvP. Because the game has been very, very close, there hasn't been that obvious kill point for Harstem like there was in that very first game. Certainly, there's been less scouting from him for that point, too. But until now we see like a 30 armor supply difference. Initially, I don't think we saw that big of one. So, you don't go for the kill. You could throw away your lead that you have, being Harstem, and you go into the supreme late game PvP, which now DnS is going to be happy to already have a Stargate. He can get the fleet beacon a little bit faster, and just adds on a second Stargate right now. We have Disruptors on the way for Harstem, which is always interesting to see, bringing that back. 75 probes to 72. I mean, their economies have been pretty even. If anyone has not taken a good long look at the income graph, just do it right now. You can see that it's a differential. So sometimes all the peaks look amazing. You gotta actually look at the numbers to say if they're really good or not. Wrong hockey. +3 was not started immediately by Harstem, but he still does have a lead in it. So 70 seconds, and he would look even better in this engagement. Disregarding upgrades, the disruptors are what's going to look really nice here. So Harstem's actually in a bit of an awkward spot, right? Like, he's not going to have the concave defensively, but DnS might choke himself in a little bit too, and that's where the disruptors get a lot of damage done. Now, the Warp Prism is picked off. DnS started making some Phoenix. These are also going to be able to help out against the disruptors if they're brought forward, but right now are just being used defensively. Immortals are kind of increasingly becoming useless. I said, you know, a couple minutes ago, like, maybe they'd be helpful, maybe not, but as we get into Supreme late game PvP, they will just be useless units. So, not, you know, having 4 instead of 6 is probably a better number. Actually, it's 5. Both disruptor shots sent out. The third one is available, not really getting too much. Very quick split from DnS, but looks like the Nexus still went down, even the Immortals being picked up. And DnS is going to use this opportunity to go forward. A couple of feedbacks slammed down on the Phoenixes. He doesn't want any of his crucial units being picked up. But that means that those High Templars, they actually are trying to morph into Archons right now. They can't. Harstem, without the concave, even though he has that upgrade lead, his disruptors weren't useful. He was missing 2 Archons, I believe, with those feedbacks. And he needs a better position. His Chargers are starting to get up there and hitting those Archons. But the Archons are dealing splash damage. Don't forget that. And the disruptor doesn't even get a shot off. A pickup happens, and DnS is looking to steamroll through Harstem's army. Defender's advantage usually kicks in. That's the upgrade is supposed to kick in. Ooh, that was a nice hit. And, you know, there was a lot of things that said Harstem could be able to take that fight, but DnS actually, just with the better positioning, enough Phoenixes to push past the feedbacks and lift the disruptors, and he's able to take out the 4th base and a chunk of Harstem's army supply. Now, DnS also lost a 4th base, and the fact that they just crush into each other means that, you know, that is kind of an important factor to think of. If one person had a huge bank and they lose a base, I mean, who cares? But you don't have a bank, you just attack in, you're trying to reinforce, maybe you don't slap down that 4th base immediately, you fall way behind. But DnS actually double expanded, which could have been dangerous, but he took a really good fight. We have a DT even being added in here, caught in that stasis trap. And the stasis trap is clever. We have those High Templars once again getting the feedbacks, but then having to spend so long turning into an Archon. One even kind of pushed forward like a bowling ball. It's just killed before it can do anything. Disruptor shot does hit a couple of units, but the disruptors seem like they're just a questionable asset for Harstem. Where they could have gotten amazing hits, they've really been missing them. I think that the one amazing hit we saw was on the weak Archons that got like 4 of them. Another one is coming forward, gets the hit, but these Archons aren't weak, so they still live through it. Harstem's Immortals are trying their best, and the Immortals, something that sometimes doesn't really get a highlight moment in late game PvP is, but it's just not enough. Harstem goes down a game. DnS, the French Protoss. He got 2nd in his group to get here. That's why he's facing Harstem. Harstem got 1st in his group. He's the one winning. In the bottom right is the blue Protoss. He is Harstem. Alright, so Harstem finds himself down a game. One of them, hey, you don't scout that proxy gateway and the stalkers run into your face and boom, you're dead. Yeah, okay. But the second game, he got himself into a decent position in a 12-minute game where he even had an army supply lead, a substantial one at one point. He had defender's advantage on his side, so that includes photon overcharges and usually the better positioning, although I would say that was certainly what was missing. And still was unable to take a fight. I really gotta blame the disruptors, to be honest. There's a couple things in that fight that was very awkward. It's one of the longer fights we get to see in StarCraft 2, where it did last for quite some time. And even when Harstem tapped out, he was only down 20 army supply. He just knew he had lost momentum, wouldn't be able to recover. Where you can see a lot of different things added up to the victory. Where, you know, you had the disruptors miss the first 2 shots, and then DnS went in shortly after. Phoenixes got at least 2 cancels that I saw, but maybe even more on another few disruptors that popped out. The High Templars got their feedbacks in an attempt to stop the disruptors from getting their shot canceled, and that only worked to a degree. And then they were, you know, 2 Archons that were missing twice. That happened twice in those battles. Which sounds like such a small thing to note, but, you know, it was hilarious watching 2 High Templars trying to kiss, and there was like an Immortal in their way. They actually couldn't combine because the army was so wrapped in, and that was the probably most obvious problem, which is that Harstem's army was kind of tucked on the bottom side of his nexus, not with a huge concave, a lot of his units not getting the shots they're supposed to, whereas DnS had freedom in that regard. So you look at it, it makes a lot of sense, but then you look at it before the actual fight happened, and it should have been an even fight. The DnS, I guess, kind of just kudos on his ability to read PvP fights. Actually having that correct decision making is a big part of what's the tiers of being the best pro gamer, I think. You know, there's tiers of StarCraft, literally like bronze to masters, which you can argue about which one is which, and you know, one requires better macro, and then you have to focus on your micro, and then you have to focus on your scouting, like that'll get you up to masters. But then if you actually want to get to like real pro, you're going to be talking about like decision making, like build order choices in a best of 5, right? Like actual game sense, knowledge of your opponents, like stuff like that. And decision making can be a big deal. I say for a lot of times, Protoss who are like on the cusp of becoming the next best thing, their problems are usually splitting up their armies, so they have a problem defending against like the better Terrans, the better Zergs. And then like Terrans have a problem usually with decision making, is what I've seen anyways. I remember Kelazur before he went to BlizzCon this year, so hype for him. He would have a lot of missteps, just complete misreads of the engagements in TVZ. But anyways, there are neither players here right now. We do have some scuffles going on. Stalkers versus Adepts. DnS going for that proxy gateway once again. Harstem added on that robotics facility, went for an Immortal first, no Observer, and is adding on a War Prism. The War Prism obviously not going to be too helpful usually, but I would say its micro potential can actually be big. So while second Immortal might have been a better use of resources, the War Prism might be good too. But Harstem was so distracted, I suppose, microing against everything. He once again had no scouting anywhere, including the main base. And DnS, well, he actually gets Harstem gets a nice force field, disengaging a quarter of the Stalkers, but they managed to snipe the Mothership Core. And even if they hadn't done that, there's no more pylons in the natural base. Harstem would have been down to protecting his main, which would not still have been that great of a sign. His Nexus is going to go down. He's trying to get pot shots on the Stalkers. Or is it? Shields have gone down, but DnS is really respecting that Immortal. He's going to have to focus fire it. Barriers popped. Another hit of the Stalkers on it. Harstem had 2 Stalkers that had to run away from the fight that now awkwardly joined back in. The Immortal goes down, but a second one pops up, and Harstem might just be on the cusp of actually defending against this. All of DnS's Stalkers are low. They're all taken out in the blink of an eye, and a couple of Adepts come in here. They're not going to get much damage done. Harstem with the clutch second Immortal. Warp Prism just died and didn't do anything useful, so work for that idea, but nonetheless. Second Immortal pops out in time. DnS not even bring over his Mothership Core. Is not going to be able to help out that much, and is now looking for straight up probe kills to perhaps bring himself back into this game. Mothership Core, you have a big dream here. She's like, I'm gonna get 1 billion probes. Just you watch, I'm gonna bring back this game. So don't forget, even if Harstem loses out on the probe war, which he isn't right now, he has a much better army and is currently taking on DnS's. Recall, I guess, was used? Yeah, it was. Yeah, so that thing didn't get very much at all. Harstem has defending Adepts in the main base, and this is going to be a game over for DnS soon enough. Not enough damage done. Another surprise, but Harstem had a safer build this time. Simply going for that Immortal first really helped. DnS not willing to tap out yet. He's now getting a couple of sentries, trying to make a lot of gas. He's going to look for the key force field snipes. Harstem did just pick up his 2 Immortals, which might give DnS opportunity to win the ground war here. But his army is mostly sentries, so I'm not feeling it. GG. DnS almost taking another game with a very same, if not the exact same build as game number 2. Harstem this time well prepared. And that's going to take us into the ace match. It's going to be on Ascension. Ascension to Ire. Thank you, Kino1, for the Twitch Prime sub. Okay, it's tied up 2-2. An epic PvP battle in the bottom right. As the red Protoss, it is DnS. In the top left, as the blue Protoss, he is Harstem. Are you kidnapping cats? Tell me the truth. No, these are all mine. Yes, that is my workout section of my room. My box of crap that you guys saw is not permanent. It's holding stuff that I have to get to BlizzCon. Alright, what have you got going on here? So, 5th game. 4 games, 2 of them very similar with the proxy gateway stalker attack. Worked once, didn't quite work the second time. DnS, I would say, has been the aggressor. He's been the one with the cheesy builds, the proxies. Harstem has always been the defender. But while that sometimes means the macro game goes to the guy that's not cheesy, that's definitely not always the case. Especially when you get to these top tier players. You know? Actually, I had this example, but I don't want to use it. Trying to think of another player. If Innovation decided that for BlizzCon all he wanted to do was play with the T-Rax, and he could probably still win with that, doesn't mean that he suddenly can't play a solid macro game. And DnS certainly showed us in the Abyssal game that he has a solid macro game and can make correct decisions about his engagements. Yeah, there's definitely a small part of me that also thinks maybe he got lucky. Maybe in a different world, 2 or 3 things happen a little bit better for Harstem, and DnS looks like a fool for trying to push into that nexus, but this is this universe, and DnS is able to take that victory. So he scouts. Harstem, yet again, I guess, deciding not to. He's scouted with a probe twice, 2 out of 5 of these games. One saw a proxy Stargate, which is very helpful, and the other one saw not very much, nothing important. I think that was the Abyssal game. But it is a little dangerous, you know. That's what killed him, I would say, in the first game where DnS went for the proxy gateways. But feeling confident now that he's out with it again. Certainly the rope opener is kind of the safest way you can play PvP. If you're looking for a build to play PvP as you're learning Protoss, you're looking to sharpen your build orders as you reach Masters and so forth. This is probably, like, what Harstem's been doing is probably the build you're going to want to learn. There's a lot of small little things you're going to have to consider, but that's for any builds. This is probably the macro build you're going to want to learn. Unless you're a cheesy guy and you just, you know, want to cheese all day. DnS now also going for the safe build of the Robo, even getting a Sentry out here. So Sentry can build up a lot of energy, 2 Sentries, in fact. So they're vulnerable, right? If Harstem goes for Adept and Shades in here, he could snipe 1, maybe even 2 if DnS was really not paying attention. But if they're not sniped, they're going to be able to build up energy and actually get Hallucinated Scout. Which sounds like it's a Hallucinated Scout. Hallucinated Phoenix to Scout. You know, why can't you hallucinate things that don't exist in this game? I mean, who would really care? But yeah, you're gonna get that Scout, so maybe chroning out an Observer isn't of the utmost importance. Although we did see when Harstem did this build, he did both, chrono out an Observer and got Hallucinated Phoenix. And, that wasn't too useful. But you're also gonna be able to get as many Force Fields as possible and Guardian Shield. Never underestimate it. So you can see Hallucinated Phoenix already on the way out as Harstem is pushing forth with some Stalkers. Aggression on the front, while a Stargate hits from the side or the back. That would be the ideal. And the Phoenixes barely scout the Stalkers running across the map. He might have only seen one. I don't think he saw these ones, but either way, he knows it's on the way. It's if he sees that a Stargate's a follow-up. He's got 1 pylon, but he does have a Guardian Shield and Force Fields, perhaps, soon? The Sentries would be something nice for Harstem to pick off. Hallucinated Phoenix does get into the main base and sees the Oracle literally pop out. He even gets to chase it a little bit, and DnS will now have to make a very solid decision of how to split up his army. Looks like 3 Stalkers to the main base, everything else to the front. That's a pretty solid split. 3 Stalkers are enough that the Oracle would have to suicide, and then it would only still get like 5 probe kills, which is not enough. Anything less than that, and the Oracle might live while still getting a couple probes. Nice force fields, catch 2 of the Stalkers, and that Photon Overcharge gets both of them as well. Oracle deflected in the main base, and Harstem's aggressive opener not quite working, but it is giving him room to get a 3rd base. Now this is where, I mean, he does kind of have to make up for his opener. You know, I talked about the Stargate when DNS went for it on Abyssal, how it's usually not a structure that you're going to be using a lot of in the mid game, and you're going to be at a deficit to those powerful units such as, and definitely the Immortal. But it gives you that map presence, it gives you the scouting that you might be able to get away with a 3rd base, power up your economy a little bit harder than them, and then come back in the army type, which is the problem number 1. Blink is also on the way for DNS. So Blink kind of takes back control of that map. But if Harstem adds on his own Immortals, which he is, then obviously having a lot of Blink Stalkers is usually not what you want to do anymore. That's very contradictory to a year ago when it was all Blink Stalker Disruptor, but certainly the stronger army composition that is Charge Archon has overtaken, again, PvP. But it's kind of like, regardless of what he has as tech, he has a strong army and a strong push right here, right now. Harstem needs to get into proper positioning. And also, maybe, yeah, we'll need a Photon Overcharge or 2. But I think with this army, he's fine. He actually goes forward trying to find the army, trying to snipe the War Prism. Ends up being perhaps a huge mistake. Blink is done. Not too much Blink micro going down there. Yeah, losing 2 Stalkers that he probably should have blinked back. And the War Prism lives. That's the worst part about this. The Oracles also died trying to target the Immortal, which they got it low but not dead. So that shield's gonna pop up again. And that War Prism, man, the fact that it's alive is a really big bummer. If that dies, DNS probably just says, like, I don't really want to commit to this anymore and leaves. Which apparently is gonna do anyways. But that's a little more threatening than it would be if they actually died. Charge is on the way for both players, and Harstem, well, initially that aggressive move looked like his death, ends up being okay. Still down in the army supply, but DNS is starting to just send his units every which way. They might get a lot of probe damage, but I don't know if he's going to be able to get that front attack to work. An Archon about to morph in here, but Harstem's not paying attention as he was dealing with the Adepts. He pulls the probe to deal with them, has army in the main base. Only losing 3 is not very bad, as long as he can defend his 4th, or 3rd rather, which he does. Now while this attack is going on, DNS is also macroing. His charge is later, his Temple Archives was later, but he is starting to catch up there. He's got this War Prism still alive, that further probe damage should occur, but now we gotta go back to the idea about the Stalkers. You know, as we get into the real mid-game, the beefiness that is mid-game PvP, where they start to get bigger and bigger armies, Immortals straight up counter the Stalkers, but then so do Charge Lots. Stalkers become more and more useless as time goes on. So this is a bit of dead weight. It's coming down to that point where, like, literally you look at the supply, which is not great for DNS, and think that even less, because the Stalkers probably won't be able to help out that much. And now he's the one that needs to buy time. His Warp Prism could do that, but he's really trying to put as many units as possible on the defense. And he's also got to get into good positioning, which he's going to lose out on because he doesn't have enough scouting. His observer is actually in a very useless location, and he is entirely caught off guard. Harstem moves to the north side. There's only a couple of Stalkers. And there's a lot of charge lots, and DNS, well, he's finally caught back up in that army supply and has an upgrade lead. Didn't see that one, but that is important. Has a couple of Stalkers that might not be too useful. Harstem has a Warp Prism. Adding on a Dark Shrine as well. And hasn't had to deal with any harassments in the last couple of minutes. Might change soon now that DNS is confident he can hold. Harstem with command of the map again does go for a faster 4th, so he's still gaining an edge from this. It does need to catch up on the upgrades. I mean, this is a similar situation to that Abyssal game where Harstem was the one on the defense with the greater upgrade, but still ended up losing. Charge lots walk in and walk right out. Don't want to take on all the pylons, I guess. DTs do go past the army into the natural. DnS has since grabbed that observer that was there, so he doesn't know these are about to deal a lot of damage. Harstem briefly thinks about attacking the natural, leaves a third DT to do that, and looks for maybe more important structures in the main base. Oddly enough, picks a gateway, but I think he's just more focused on the main distraction more than anything else. DnS has to keep his army here and has to keep it on guard. Harstem did just back off so that his immortals ended up being on the front, which I think is unideal. Their barriers got popped quickly and they died very quickly after that. Hoping there's no observer, which there isn't. I thought the observer was here. Where'd it go? Of course, it responded to the DTs because there weren't any cannons up. So, offensive DTs ended up working out. 33 probes went down while this is going on. Both main and natural eventually got ransacked, even though initially he was targeting a gateway. And DnS, even though he held on the front lines, is looking to be in a very bad position. He has one moment here. He's going to have +2. He's going to have a bit better of an army supply, and he's trying to get a warp prism right now. If he counters, maybe he can do something. Harstem has full knowledge of this possibility, has both Nagas taken, has a warp prism to buy even more time, but I think at this point DnS is going to have to just let go of his third and try and win the game with a direct fight while he still has the possibility of doing that. Good hold position around the cannon, but he's going to need to warp in defensively, which is just not very ideal for him right now. That warp prism finally popped out. Where is it? Here he comes. Harstem initially think he's going to go to the 4th base, I guess. That's, he did see the army going, so okay, now he realizes where it is. Unfortunately, you know, the Ascension to Ire, you have to go up a ramp, up a choke, and if you can't get their army out of position to do that, then you probably aren't going to get up it. Harstem even added on a cannon here. It's an interesting decision. He's got to be careful not to once again find himself in a bad defensive position, though. That was kind of making an odd SimCity for him. Now has a bit more room, but DnS once again with that bigger concave has that upgrade lead. 7 Archons to 6. 7 Stalkers to 2. That's a game where DnS's army isn't quite as effective. Although sometimes they get very important snipes. I don't want to completely, you know, just dispel the Stalkers. This is a very tough fight. Harstem has to hold. He's down 20 army supply. He's constantly retreating and losing army on the retreat. He's gone for disruptors once again. No Phoenixes this time to pick them up, though. It gets a pretty good hit. Pops a Baron and an Immortal as well. DT's on the front lines. If there is an observer, that disruptor goes down. Most of the charge of the Harstem go down as well, and he can't take care of that warp prism. His Archons are still in the front lines, dealing a lot of splash damage. The Immortal's protected in the back, but for how much longer? Militia Corps almost has another potent overcharge, and it's still a very close fight. But DnS, he doesn't have a lot to fall back on. So even if Harstem would lose this, if it was a situation where it's 20 army supply to 20 army supply, Harstem would have to just give up his 3rd base and continue on the game. But he's not even going to lose the fight. He's going to win it, and as such, win this game. Still 56 probes to 27. DnS might have dealt with the 2nd DT harassment, but is still reeling from the 1st one. And Harstem has that 4th base, which is why, even if he had lost that fight, if it was close enough, he could have given up the 3rd base and still been okay. DnS does know about it, but knows that he had to go for the kill move. Had he gone and killed the 4th base first, that would have given Harstem an extra crucial 30 seconds to still win the game. Disruptor's gonna get, oh, no hit. Nice little pickup with the Warp Prism, but there's a 2nd Disruptor. Kills one Immortal, pops the other one. And Harstem has taken this game. Very, very tough fight. DnS almost had it. So close. Harstem does reign supreme in this PvP. Ace match game goes to Harstem. That was a pretty fun PvP. Now, the French Protoss DnS will go to the losers round. We'll face the loser of Mana versus Snoot. That is our next series coming up here. Of course, in between series, we're going to have a bit of a longer break where we do talk about TING, who is sponsoring this tournament. They sponsored 4 seasons so far, which is awesome. And a lot of that is because of you guys. You guys have been interested enough to actually check out TING, sign up, get a SIM card, and hopefully you've been using our link to btcv@ting.com to do so you can get $25 off. And as such, we've had a 4th season. We'd love to get a 5th one. So if you're interested, if you live in the US, you use a lot of Wi-Fi, not a lot of data, then you might want to switch to Ting. There's no contracts involved either, so even if you don't like it, you can go back to whatever else might suit your preference, and Ting is not shy about admitting that that's fine. They don't, you know, work for everyone, but they might work for a lot of people who don't realize they're an option. Without further ado, gonna take a break, show you guys some Ting commercials, and get Mana versus Snoot set up.